So every guy knows the little blue pill. So it's probably obvious that that is the most widely used, the #1 widely used sexual drug in the world. But what most men don't understand is that it is the most misunderstood shortcut in men's health. Coach JMO here, and let's break down how it works, why it sometimes fails, and what actually fixes the problem long term. Now first, the science, but stay tuned to learn more about what's actually happening under the hood here, because it goes far deeper than just what you think. So at first glance, you have the blood vessel here, right? And the blood vessel is just going to have really tight spots where it's really hard for blood to get through. It ends up trickling through the blood vessels here. And this adds up over time from lifestyle habits and other factors. So ED is not just in your head. It is also this blood flow here. And by age 40, over 40% of men already struggle with it. And then by age 50, it's even more. It's half of men. So this plaque here builds up in your penile arteries, just like it would happen in your heart. Now, if you can't get enough blood flow through, that is going to lead to performance issues. So this is where the sildenafil, aka Viagra, or the tadalafil, aka Cialis, and the other drugs that have these PDE5 inhibitors come into play. And these drugs work by using the nitric oxide, cGMP, and blood flow pathway. And what they do is they block this cGMP to an extent. And what this cGMP does is it tells the blood flow to go back to normal. But as you can see here, there's already a disconnect, because if we look at the blood flow, it's not an issue of having blood flow stop and go. Yes, it helps to get the cGMP to stop, because then your erections stay harder for longer. But a lot of men have other issues, underlying issues, which doesn't let the blood get there and impedes the blood flow in the first place. So right now, to push through and use pressure to get more blood flow to the penile tissues. And if you're tracking with me here, sometimes that excess pressure leads to buildup. Sometimes that's not the solution. It's just by pushing more in, you're gonna get more out. Sometimes you need to unblock what's actually happening first. And the cheat code here is that when your body is aroused, naturally, mentally, we're gonna talk about that after, it releases nitric oxide. And that right there, that is the spark. That is what causes vasodilation, which then in turn leads to erection. Now, your body also has a brake pedal, the PDE5. And that's why these drugs have the name PDE5 inhibitors. So what it's doing is shutting that down. These pills, the sildenafil, the tadalafil, they are basically making the brakes weaker or blocking the brake pedal. Now, you're not cutting the brake line completely, but you are making it weaker so the brakes are not nearly as effective. And this method here works for about 60% of men, but that other 40% don't really get to the root issue, because this is a quick fix. And yes, it has been shown in studies to be safe and to be able to even be healthy for the heart. And those things may be good, but we also want to consider that there are other issues going on here, underlying issues that could be physical issues or mental issues that you're definitely going to want to look at if you want to have peak overall health. Because man, I've been there, especially mentally. And I'm gonna get into that story in a moment of just why I wasn't able to fully express myself intimately because of those mental blocks I had and how it all played into this system. So if you look at the pros, we have effective short term. So it's gonna work for most men, and it's gonna help get you that rock hard erection that you're looking for. But then we also have the cons. For example, it does not clear plaque. And then it also leads to nutrient depletion. This is things like your B12, your zinc, your CoQ10. You have to make sure to balance those nutrients, especially if you're taking a drug like this. And then of course, there's the side effects that you hear from the companies. That's rare vision loss, rare hearing loss, the blood is flushing from your face, or some people have complained about headaches, back pain, things like that. But the real issue here is the hormone suppression. That includes your testosterone levels. And that's a big one for most guys. Most guys don't think that taking this drug is going to impact their hormone levels, but it actually has been shown to be the opposite. Because studies do show that it's generally safe. You're not gonna take a pill and bad things are gonna happen to you. But with chronic use, a lot of guys end up depleting their nutrients, messing with their hormones, and then depending on this pill, not just for the effectiveness, but for their confidence. And that adds to the whole mental loop that makes nitric oxide production so difficult. So a lot of it is up here. So what is the solution? Well, we have NAD, hormones, CO2, and the one big one that covers everything is your nutrients. So these four are gonna be what you really wanna balance in order to optimize your sexual health and your nitric oxide production. Because NAD is what fuels nitric oxide in the first place. And then of course with nutrients, and then of course the big picture, and then with CO2, this one's cool. This one is something that most people don't look at. But it is the real vasodilator. It's safe, it's anabolic, it's natural, and you can even use it in CO2 baths. Because overhyping nitric oxide is not the whole story here. Yes, it plays a role, but just because it's effective doesn't mean you want to bombard your body with nitric oxide. See, CO2 is a much more natural way to give your body what it actually needs. And you can also do it naturally through breathing. And then of course, your hormone levels. This one we're always going to talk about because hormones play such a crucial role for men and women's health. Because the issue that most guys have is ED. They're not taking this pill for fun. They're taking it because they feel like they have erectile dysfunction. And what plays a role there is your prolactin, your testosterone, your recovery time, which all play a role on your performance. And for guys dealing with excessive plaque, there's acoustic shockwave therapy, which helps break up that excess plaque. And of course, that combined with proper nutrient changes is going to lead you even better in your health. So what it really comes down to here is the Band-Aid versus the root cause. That is the big question. And that is what we're gonna get into. Viagra is the #1 ED drug in the world for a reason. It works fast, it's safe for most, and it buys you time. But it is a Band-Aid. If you don't fix your blood flow, your nutrients, your NAD, your hormones, you're not really solving the problem. So do you really want a quick fix, or do you want to rebuild your body so you never have to use the pill again? And even if you have all of these things correct, you're still not going to figure it out unless you work on your brain. And that is what I'm going to share with you right now. Now, what people overlook here is the mental side of the S3 health. Yes, there is the metabolic depletion and the nitric oxide stress. There's also the neuroendocrine disruption and even the vascular remodeling and the over-reliance. Getting into the science of why that actually happens and why drugs like PDE5 inhibitors don't build tolerance, but do build reliance. And what actually changes in your body's ecosystem when you take these drugs consistently. But the mental side here, man, this is the one that I can really relate to. Now, there is one side of this where if you're someone who consistently takes these drugs and then stops taking them, you may feel like you can't perform at your best. You may get in your head and not be able to perform without taking the drugs. Not because your body isn't physically capable of getting up, but because in your head, you think that, oh, because I'm not using it, I'm not going to be good enough, it's not going to work. And then it ends up not being as good as you were hoping it to be. But when it comes to relationships, man, there is a mental block here. There is something very important about being stimulated by the right woman. The right partner for you is going to allow you to actually get that nitric oxide pathway opened up. And that is where the magic is, because that's the starting step here. Once you give your body everything it needs and it has the system and the ecosystem necessary to perform at its best, you're going to be off to the races. But getting there is something that almost no one's talking about. And that is what I want to focus on. And this is hard because it's not something that you can look at as directly. It's going to have a lot more abstract. But as someone who's been through this over and over again, being able to be frustrated and being confused and not being able to perform the way I want to perform with the people I care about the most, but then also not being able to and having to rely on cheap dopamine and adrenaline to really get that pathway going. And what I've boiled it down to is this: being with someone that you fear. Now, not in a bad way, but someone that holds you accountable. Not someone that's going to beat you up or someone that's toxic. Yes, that seems to work for some people, but it's a short-term thrill, not healthy. What you want is knowing that that person can call you out, and that person, as funny as this sounds, may have options. Now you can be married in a long-term relationship and still have that understanding with the person. So when it comes to finding someone, it's not about, oh, she needs to have this body type or this height, or she needs to have this hair color. Yes, those things can provide short-term gratification, but what you really need to find is accountability. Someone who sees you for who you are actually and holds you accountable to be that person. And then you in turn need to be authentic and congruent with that person. If you're hiding something, that's gonna show up in the bedroom, whether you like it or not, and it's gonna impact that pathway that leads to that nitric oxide release. So you need to make sure you're authentically yourself with that person. Sometimes to a fault. It may not be pleasant. It may not be good, especially if you're a people pleaser kind of person. You're gonna need to be straight up and honest. And the trick here is that that person can do the same thing with you. It's gotta be a two-way street. So yes, this gets into the psychology and the psychotherapy a lot more than people expect. And that is why there are so many countless books and different speakers who talk about the mental side of intimacy. And this is something for you to discover on your own. But in my own journey, that is what I found to be the real secret here. Yes, the cheap thrills can work in the short term, just like the blue pills work in the short term. They're circumventing the root cause and even hijacking similar systems that are going to give you that in the long term. But if I could tell you anything here, it's to have true congruence with yourself and to make sure your partner feels that way. It can be someone you've known your whole life, or it can be someone you met last week. If there's an understanding and you guys are on the same page and you both feel a strong connection to one another, those things are going to make a huge difference in the way that your body produces nitric oxide and in the way that their body is producing their sexual hormones and in the way that their body is getting aroused as well. But yes, of course, it comes with the risk. It comes with losing that person. It comes with upsetting someone or pissing someone off. That is part of why it's so valuable, because there is risk, but it's healthy risk. It's not the risk of being caught or the risk of doing something wrong. It's the risk of missing out on something because you're being honest with how you actually feel. And that is what most people don't get about the overall health. But this has been Coach JMO, and I want to remind you to take care of your health, because a lot of these things aren't just about your health in the bedroom, but they're about your overall health, well-being, and mental stability. So make sure you take these things seriously and make sure you apply them into your daily life.